Okay, so in object-oriented programming, we have what's called a class hierarchy, meaning there is a parent class or an abstract class, which is like a blueprint class for all other child shapes to use. So obviously the rectangle, circle, and line, these are a type of shape. So if we go into these, we can, oops, sorry, we can see that my line is a type of shape. So we know by the rule of inheritance that my line will inherit everything, including the fields and methods of shape. So if we go into shape, what we can see is we have two constructor methods, one called the default constructor, meaning one that doesn't take any parameters, and one that takes in color as a parameter. What we can see is we have some abstract methods, draw outline, draw, and is at. And by abstract, what we mean is that this will change for each child. So for the rectangle, circle, and line, they all have a different implementation of draw outline, a different implementation of draw, and a different implementation of is at. Now we will notice that mine, I have all of these private. The reason is I can keep these private because we make these exposed by the properties down here. We have properties to do this. We make a public color. We are making color public with the capital color property. We don't need to actually access underscore color anywhere. We are making it public here. Notice we've got some virtuals as well. That's for the my line to work in my code. So if we have a look back in my line, what we have here is a private end x and a private end y. Ignore length here, we don't actually use this. Now have a look here. We have a massive constructor, right? This constructor takes the color, it takes start x, start y, end x, and end y. Now, this method, it doesn't actually do anything with color. This is saying to the base class, so the parent class shape, we want to give that the color. We're not actually touching color in here. This is the actually I've forgotten the word for it, but this is part of the class hierarchy. This is the entire point of object oriented programming. This is single responsibility principle, I believe. We are saying like, because we are not handling color in here. Every shape has a color. So why should we set the shape here? We've got a single responsibility, and that is from the shape class. This class is responsible for handling the shape. So the color here, we are setting underscore color, and this is how it works. It works here. This is where color is actually used, right? That's a single responsibility. So my rectangle, making it green from this default constructor, there's no parameters here, and all of these parameters here will go into, so if we say new my rectangle with no parameters, this will be the default constructor, and it will create just a green rectangle at 0, 0 with 112 and 112 height and width. So this will get shipped into here, and it will make our green rectangle. Obviously, because we have color as a parameter on my rectangle, if we have a look inside of program.cs, we can technically say, if we were to do new my rectangle, we can technically give this a color. We can technically give this a color, but then we are using the other, not the default. We are using the constructor that takes in the x, y, width, and height as well. Notice we've got one overload. That means there's one other constructor, the default constructor. So I'll just leave this at the default constructor, and what we're doing is changing the x and y property. So see, when I hover over this, it's inheriting it from shape.x, not my rectangle. My rectangle has no reference to the x and y. That's the shape class's responsibility. So that's how we're able to set x and y here. My rectangle inherited that of my shape. So that's how that all works. And the same goes for my circle. Notice the only thing we've got here is radius. We don't care about where it's drawn. We don't really care about how the color is being set. but we can access the properties of the shape here. So notice this property is coming from the shape class. The X is a property from the shape class, Y as well. But underscore radius, this is coming from my circle. This is coming from this class. This is the only private that is actually used. All of these are part of shape. That's why it's single responsibility. Everything that is responsible is inside of shape. The only thing that my circle is responsible for is for obviously creating an override method to draw a circle, to create an override method to draw the outline, and an override method for is_at. So how this is working is because we said these are abstract, and each class, each child class, has its own implementation of that. But they're all using the shape class's properties because these are all public. These can be protected, but we can keep them public. There's no reason for them to be protected only. So yeah, that's the single responsibility of this. And we also provide a getter and setter for the radius as well if we wanted to change that. But this is not actually set. But we could inside of program.cs. Technically, if we wanted to inside of my circle, we could say new shape dot radius. I believe. Nope, we cannot do that because we never actually put this on the shape class. And how we would do that is by making it virtual. And by virtual, it means it's not needed in child classes. We are saying if it exists, we could have it. So if I say public integer called radius, this has an empty get and an empty set, we can see because the my circle provides implementation for this, we can see that now this will work. See how it's actually setting that? So I can actually override the radius of our circle from what it will currently because we're saying new circle. This is using the default constructor, right? And by default, my circle will be set to 62 in radius. But here we're setting it to 20. So if I actually .NET run this, what we can see is if it works. Sorry, we are not overriding. What we need to do is inside of my circle, we need to provide what's going on here? An override, I believe, because it is virtual. And we can see we have our small circles now from what they would have been. So that's how you would do that. And these endx and endy, that's because of the my line, because these have endx and endy, and we need to be able to access these from program.cs to be able to change where the endx and endy is. Otherwise, if they were not on the shape CS class as virtual, we wouldn't be able to change that, and C# would complain about that.